Hello, and welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. I'm your host, Guthrie, and my co-host is Susan.
Hello.
So, yes, I'm doing host and co-host today, a little bit different. Susan, do you want to give the disclaimers today?
The disclaimers, or you mean
The pre-show chatter?
The cheerleading. Yes, I'll do that. So first of all, if you like our podcasts, you should subscribe to the podcast, and then you should tell your friends, and then you should rate it on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, because that really does help us get the word out about it. And secondly, if you have any questions or comments or need to reach us for any reason, you can email us, and the email address is info@theteamw.com. How did I do?
That was very good.
I should have done really poorly, because now you're going to want me to do it.
No, I'll still probably do it. I like talking. Good. So for those of you who are out there listening, we are recording this on August 2nd, but it's probably not going to get out to you guys for
10 days.
10 days.
We're recording ahead.
Yeah. So the other thing is that, Susan, Susan, you should describe what we're actually going to be talking about today, because it's actually pretty relevant. And so maybe this is stupid to do it, because the classic line is, a day is a week is
a
year, and a year is an eternity in politics. So.
Oh, well, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about persuasion techniques used in political campaigns. And we do it with I do it with a little bit of trepidation, because, talking about politics, right? That's tough. And on the other hand, we talk about persuasion a lot, and psychology and techniques of persuasion. And I'm always fascinated with what political campaigns do or don't do in terms of the, what persuasion and psychology principles are they using to try and persuade people to vote for their candidate.
Well, I mean, and obviously there is nothing.
What?
There's nothing more interesting than a political, because it's like the ultimate sale.
I guess, although some people really don't like politics, so they might not be interested. But why do you say it's the ultimate sale?
Well, because you have to sell the person that they are that what their identity as a person is.
I guess.
Which is
kind of weird.
What's your thought?
Well, first of all, before we dive into it, I want to say that we are going to mainly focus on political campaigns in the U.S., but everything we're going to talk about, I think, is relevant to any political campaign anywhere. We're going to focus on the extremely controversial campaigns going on right now in U.S. presidential politics, but the stuff
no, but also just generally,
because that's what I'm going to use. I think we're going to use U.S. presidential politics.
Yeah, no, but I want to broaden it to broader than just presidential.
Yeah, it really has to do with any time anyone is running for any office.
No, you're correct that we're going to be using the cycle.
Yes.
But it's not. The United States is not just electing the president. This cycle
will
be senators and congressmen and dog catchers, which people might laugh. But if you're not familiar, there are a number of states in which many governmental positions must be elected officials, including dog catcher.
Do you have that in Illinois?
I have no idea. I don't think so.
Yeah,
well, first of all, that would be a municipal title. That wouldn't be a state title. So.
Yeah.
So it would be up to the municipality to determine if they wanted to elect their dog catchers or not.
And these more local elections are actually really critical for many reasons.
Especially in the United States, yeah.
Yeah, and one of which is that's it's the people in if you run for a high level political office like a president.
Well, but before, I should just say, for those of you who are not intuitively familiar with the United States federal system of government,
Yeah.
there is at the basic level, each little hamlet, each little town has their own city government, and that is completely elected by the people in that city. They run things like sewer and water and the roads, and the school system is generally elected on a school board. They do property taxes. Up one level from that, there's the county. Those are, maybe 100 towns, right, in one little county. And the county does more stuff. They might have a sales tax. They'll plow the roads. They'll, I don't even know what else the county does. There's a sheriff, a county sheriff.
Yeah, usually they do the prisons and the...
Yeah, prisons, even though most police officers work for the city, but there'll be, sheriffs and prisons and various other stuff. So then 100 counties will probably make up a state. And of course, I think we're all familiar with state government. State governments usually have a House of Representatives and a Senate. Kind of depends on the state, but it generally mimics the federal system. And they do a lot of stuff. They decide most of the welfare stuff is done through the states. So all the Medicare, Medicaid is administered by the states. They do the college system. The public colleges are run by the states.
Judicial.
They build all the highways. The Supreme, right? The state has all the courts operate under the states. There's a lot that the states do, and then of course there's finally the federal government that does everything else. And I think people are pretty much understand federal government, and it's there's the Senate and the House of Representatives and the president and they all kind of fight each other. So yeah, federalism. Okay.
That was a quick little explanation.
I was trying to be really, really brief, and I think
good.
I think I actually succeeded in being expedient.
All right, so now where were we?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, so
you were going to say something that people who didn't understand how the federal system of cities and counties worked would have been lost. So I felt it was my obligation to step in.
Okay. All right. Well, in I think that the ways that persuasion techniques are used vary in those different levels. The lower level, the more local you are, usually the less intense and less polarized the races are. And as you get on up, it starts to get more intense. And of course, there's the question of money, right?
Well, and it's also very different in the United States because we only have two parties. So it's not just an intense election because you're trying to get more votes than the other party. Like, literally, you either win or you lose, right? So if you're for one party, if the other party wins, you've lost. And, and it can be, right, if you get 100 votes and one more vote, then the other, if you get one more vote than the other guy, you get nothing and they get everything. So it's the winner go home, and so can make for very contentious elections because there really is a lot riding on that extra 2% in the middle, right? Because 45% know who they're voting for, and then there's the remaining, on each side, and then there's just the remaining little middle 10% that might sway their vote. Yeah. And they essentially decide the election.
Now, we have a very interesting presidential election right now, and I would say probably the most interesting presidential election in my lifetime here in the U.S.
More than 68?
Even more than, well, I wasn't born in 68. Ha, 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 right? This is probably, although I want to talk a little bit historically about some of the persuasion techniques and some of the technology used over the years, too.
Yes. We're going to try not to be, this is not going to be like a political rant.
No. So. I'm going to try not to do that. But I think we can't ignore the fact that this particular race is unusual.
It's very interesting characteristics.
And very interesting characters running for president. I mean,
Well, I guess that's a very good place to start. So back in the 1800s,
yeah.
so for example, people may not know this, vice president. The idea that you nominate someone and then they choose their vice president I mean, it's not new, but that's not how things were in America for hundreds of years. Okay, hundreds is for maybe 100 years. For the vast majority of time, and I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, you guys can correct me. But I'm pretty sure that the way it worked is you had two people run for president, and one person won, and the person who lost became their vice president.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that made for trouble. But then they switched to the kind of party system, right? Where then you were able to just kind of strategically choose your vice president. But it wasn't this idea that people vote in primaries and then their votes actually mean something, and then they choose the candidate. This is newfangled stuff. I mean, after 100 years, for 200 years out of the 250 of the United States ballpark, basically political parties are private entities. They're not public. They don't, all the kind of voting stuff, the federal laws about, elections. They don't really apply to really private elections. The Democratic and Republican parties, they're just private entities like the NRA or the basketball league something. They're just a private entity, it's kind of a weird system, and so they can choose a candidate however they want. It doesn't really matter as long as they're on the back. They could play a game of basketball, and the person with the most assists becomes the presidential candidate. I mean, over the years they've sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just to finish, over the years now they do this thing where people vote in states.
Yeah.
And then the winner of that, they have a democratic process.
Now, here's a small aside, and then really we got to get back to persuasion.
I know.
I know. Did you know?
Blah.
No, I have another small aside. Did you know that the idea of voting via a secret ballot is actually relatively new as well?
I don't know. What do you mean a secret ballot?
Well, when you go vote.
Oh, you close the little window and then they can't see who you vote for?
Yeah. No one knows who you voted for.
I had no idea.
Did you know that? That is not the way voting used to occur.
I mean, I knew standard voting procedure was you'd get a really big beard, and then each time you voted, you just cut a little bit off to
no
to fool the
way the voting used to work is you would get handed a card. You would take a card, and the card would be either blue or red. I think were the two colors for the two parties. And so you would hand in your card, and it was very obvious who you were voting for. In fact,
like it.
People would walk down the street with their card in their hand, so people knew who they were voting for. And fights would ensue, right?
Oh, duels.
They would knock you
fights.
out and punch you in the nose to prevent you from, because you had a blue card in your pocket. It was obvious who you were going to vote for. And there was no secret ballot. And do you know when that changed?
I have no idea.
When women got the right to vote.
Because
the women said, there is no way I'm going to go to the ballot box and get harassed because I'm holding a red card.
Very smart.
And so then they instituted the secret ballot. So
politics used to be a lot more contentious. I think one of my favorite political moments was right before the Civil War, when a fine, I believe it was a senator from Massachusetts, implied basically that one of the other senators from the what would soon to become the Confederacy, his cousin, I believe, was some sort of philanderer. It was some grievous insult about something, and so he went to the to the other senator in the Senate. Yeah. And he basically beat him to death with a stick while people looked on, and the guy barely survived. And so if you think things are bad, remember, senators used to almost beat each other to death.
Yeah. So if you think things are uncivilized now, you may need to rethink that.
Yeah. There are way less assassinations in more turbulent times in U.S. history.
Yeah, we kill people.
I mean, again, so that's why 68, which I was not around for, but major presidential candidate was assassinated during the election. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, that was a very crazy time. But this is also a crazy time.
This is also a crazy time.
We have two candidates.
Just wanted to put things in perspective.
One of which has never held any public office.
You can say names.
Donald Trump has never held any public office, and that's unusual. In a presidential candidate recently, they typically have held, they've been a governor of a state, they've been a senator, they've been something.
Think of the last
long time.
Yeah, because even like Reagan, he was a governor. I mean, Ross Perot wasn't, but he was a
Yeah.
He was
I mean,
a
it's
third-party
happened.
candidate.
It's happened, but it's unusual.
Well, I'm trying to think of the last time one of the
I'm not
nominees
sure,
was not.
I'm not sure about Eisenhower.
Ooh, good. Yeah. I was just thinking about generals.
He was a war general. That was
Yeah.
that was another very common thing.
So
be
Eisenhower.
high level.
I remember because Eisenhower, everyone wanted Eisenhower to run, but and people loved him, so he was probably going to get elected. But he was, if I remember correctly, he was trying to decide between the Republican and the Democratic Party. Both parties were wooing him for his candidacy because, of course, he's from the military. So
had he held any public office? I'm not sure.
No, I don't believe so, but I could.
But
he
was,
be mistaken.
So that was maybe the last time. But anyway,
Yeah.
we have someone who has not held any public office. That's Donald Trump, and then we have the first woman. It only took 200 some years, but I'll be quiet. But we have the first woman who's ever been nominated by one of the two major parties. So, those are unusual. They're also they have kind of different ideas of what they would do with the policies of the country. So they are quite different. I mean, sometimes we've had presidential races where the two parties, you can't really tell that big a difference between them in terms of what their policies are. But this time there's a clear choice, and we have some very big divisions. Where you have socioeconomic divisions. You have
divisions.
In terms of
betwixt whom within the party or between the parties
between the candidates, like you have, for instance, even before Hillary Clinton became the Democratic nominee, she was running in a primary against Bernie Sanders, and the young people, the millennials,
people under 35,
were very much for Bernie Sanders and not. Hillary Clinton.
It's been a weird election because there's been so many basically lines down.
Really, yeah.
Usually, right?
Lines.
You'll be up a couple points with a certain demographic.
Yeah, but it's not a huge line.
So Bernie won people under 35 basically by 90% to 10%.
Yeah.
So for every 10 young voters, 9 were voting for Bernie.
And we also have a thing where very few women are for Donald Trump. So we've got.
That's not true.
Yeah, that's still pretty true.
No. So very few. I mean, I think Donald Trump's down like 14 points by women, so maybe it's 65-35 or something.
It's a fairly strong line.
Oh no, but compared to minority groups.
Yeah.
There was so for example, Donald Trump is polling at about 1 or 2% with African Americans, so like 98 to 2.
Yeah, you're right. So
right?
there
and
are
maybe 85-15 with Hispanic voters.
There's these big lines. Yeah. But let's talk about persuasion techniques, because that's I've been watching. So I'm a fairly political person.
Yeah.
Like I'm married to a newspaper editor, so he's always up on the politics. So I'm usually up on the politics.
You had some storied political history as well in your past.
I have.
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, I actually ran for a public office
Ran for public office.
I was on the school board for
Sorry,
7 years.
local election.
Which I won that
when you-
first election by 7 votes.
7 votes. So when you
Yes,
talk about
literally.
going door to door,
I went door to
That's
door
amazing.
for myself, and
That's
I
democracy.
mean, I
right
live in
there.
a small town, so there weren't that many votes cast. but
were there 8 votes cast?
there was more than 8. There was probably, well, there was definitely, there was maybe 1,000 votes cast. It's definitely so in the hundreds. But anyway, I won by 7 votes.
That's a great story. And
So-
and when you were younger, you were a bit of a, I don't know, rebellious.
Oh, way
Political
younger.
field.
Yeah.
Sure.
But anyway, I've been very involved in this season. Very interested, very involved. I watched many hours of both the Democratic and the Republican convention on C-SPAN.
I should just say on your just as a general note,
Yeah.
she says she's involved, but traditionally she hasn't been too involved in the political process compared. So she's not like a delegate, She's not
No,
in the political
no,
system,
no.
or has
But
connections on that kind of thing.
I'm keeping up on
Yes,
the-
yes. I just wanted,
campaigns.
because when you say you're involved, I think people kind of think
Oh,
you're like
okay,
a party
yeah, yeah.
boss, like running the local
I am not
chapter
a party
of
boss.
something.
Although I will tell you that in the last since 2008,
Yeah, you've been involved.
I volunteer,
Yeah, sure.
and I have a meeting this afternoon.
But you're not like on payroll. You're not getting checks from the DNC.
No.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, I've also been, of course, being a psychologist and interested in persuasion and that this intersection between people and technology. I've been very interested in the campaigns and what they're doing psychologically, what they're doing in terms of persuasion, what they're doing in terms of technology. So, let's talk about that. So,
Where would you like to start?
Well, I have a question for you.
Oh yes, ask away.
Although I think this is a pretty easy question.
It's okay. I'm sure I'll have lots of stuff to say about it.
So, one of the presidential candidates, I would say a big part of their persuasion message. Now, as we start talking about the persuasion techniques in the different campaigns, I do want to say I don't have any inside knowledge as to whether for these particular candidates, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, whether they have retained the services of psychologists and persuasion experts and are purposely, using these techniques, or whether it's just happening that way. Okay. Now, I will go back and talk about some things I know about past campaigns, so one of these candidates is using very much the persuasion method of instilling fear. And Guthrie, which candidate do you think is using fear as a main persuasion technique?
That would be the Donald.
That would be the Donald, yeah. So, especially, and if any of you who are listening who might be interested in kind of looking and checking it out, that I would, and if you didn't watch the conventions and all of that, I would either watch or read the acceptance speeches of both candidates, and then you'll because their acceptance speeches very much followed what they've been doing throughout their campaigns. So, Donald Trump's has a very heavy fear message. If you don't elect him, everything is falling apart, and people are coming to kill you, and people are coming to take your jobs. And
for those who haven't watched it, the rhetoric is really that strong.
It's strong.
He said, right, like, but I think direct quotes are, our cities are falling apart.
Oh yeah, no,
we have someone definitely said that there are ISIS agents in every state, in all 50 states. ISIS is operating in all 50 states.
Basically he's saying, America is the existence of our country is being threatened. Is the essential message.
Independence Day.
And
Aliens, except it's
and
brown people.
your that's and your your jobs are being taken by immigrants, and so it's definitely a message of fear. There's also the other thing. We'll continue talking about him for a minute, and then we'll go and see what the messages are from the persuasion messages from the Clinton campaign. The other thing that another factor I think about the Trump persuasion message is it's actually relatively simple. It's relatively simple, and there aren't a lot of pieces to it. Okay, I mean basically, you should be afraid. The terrorists are coming. The cities are falling apart, and the immigrants are coming to take your jobs.
But I can fix it.
And I can fix it. And so that's not particularly complicated, right?
No.
That's a fairly simple message. Now, if we look at the Clinton message, the first thing you'll notice, again, if you watch or read their acceptance speech, all this comes out, but it also then just mirrors what they've been doing throughout their whole campaigns. If you look at the Clinton message, first of all, the first thing you'll notice is it's a lot more complicated. Okay? It's not just that these three things are going to happen, right? There's so I'll ask you, Guthrie, what did you, and I don't know how, did you watch?
I was quite busy I've been quite busy the last 2 weeks. I will say, no, I watched some of the speeches. Did I see Hillary's in particular, maybe excerpts? I've been following things quite closely.
All right. So what would you say? We just kind of outlined what Trump's basic campaign message is. Can you outline Hillary's?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on. I think her message before the convention was slightly different than her message after the convention, because the convention was much more about a kind of a national statement, whereas before she was running against Bernie, and that was different. So before the convention, her argument, first of all, she's experienced. Definitely, even before and after the convention, get things done is definitely it was definitely a theme. Once we've got to the convention, it was certainly we're the party of optimism and hope and inclusiveness, and America is a multicultural quilt of all different shades, and we're going to be accepting, and but even before, I think it's so funny because Bernie and Hillary actually are on the same page, even though their campaigns had very different tones. So Bernie essentially, so Bernie Sanders was an independent candidate. He wasn't a Democrat for years and years and years. He was an independent senator from Vermont. He was too far left for the Democrats. But what he wanted to do is he wanted to run for president to bring progressive issues that he has been championing for, 20, 30,
a long time,
40 years. He's been championing these progressive issues, and he cares about them deeply, and he wants them to become ingrained in the American public. And so he's worked diligently for years. And the idea of him running for president was never to have him be elected and then he can enact his change, but was to broaden the mainstream appeal and basically infect the Democratic Party with these progressive ideals. And he very much succeeded in doing so. The Democratic convention and party platform was considerably more progressive or left than it had been, previously. And so, but his whole thought was, he was talking about a revolution on the stump, but his whole strategy has really been one of a slow grinding change, right? That these kind of seismic shifts in America and the direction of the country It's taking years and decades, and it's all part of a long, slow grinding change to move the country forward. And that's his general, that's not exactly what he said in his speeches, but that is essentially his strategy to get the appeal of the progressive movement in the Democratic Party. And of course, Hillary's message is basically that the way things get accomplished is by slow grinding change. And I am the candidate for slow, uninspiring grinding change. And so while that might not be sexy, it is effective. And so if you want results, and if you want these values to be continued, to flourish, if you want the Obama legacy to be cemented, I, Hillary Clinton, am the candidate for that. So that's my general impression.
Yeah, and I mean, the message that came out during the convention was the phrase, stronger together.
Yeah,
right?
yes, that was inclusiveness.
So, but it just took you a lot more words to say what Hillary Clinton is about than what Donald Trump is about.
Absolutely. It's a more nuanced view.
So her message is about, it's not fear, it's hope, and it's more complicated. It's a more subtle and complicated message than Donald's.
What I absolutely love is that in the course of one political cycle, the parties have completely flipped. So in 2012, if you recall, Obama hates America. He secretly dislikes America. America's the greatest country on earth. God bless America. USA #1. How dare anyone not wear a flag pin lapel? America is the greatest country, and within the span of 4 years, the Republican convention was entirely about how horrible America is. It's falling apart. It's not even great anymore. I mean, Trump's main phrase, "Make America Great Again." It literally implies that America is not great.
Right.
And that was the Republican, mantra for how many decades? Probably since Reagan or even before. Probably since the communist era. That Democrats hated America, and but there was nothing to love. And so the Democratic primary was a flag waving and a patriotism and veterans and and right now, even as we talk, I mean, who knows in 10 days when you hear this what'll happen. The big headline in the news cycle is Donald Trump. There was a Muslim family, and one of the sons was killed in Iraq, Afghanistan. I can't remember. And he's like, I carry around a constitution in my pocket every day, and the sacrifices my family's made to this country. And of course, Donald basically wrote him off, but he's a veteran. And so had Obama written a veteran off, I can't even imagine the firestorm.
The guy himself is not a veteran. His son is.
Yeah, his son is. Yes. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. So the Democratic convention was just flag wavy and patriotism, and America's great, and we're the home of the free and the land of the brave. And it's such a weird political moment.
Yeah, because normally that would be the Republicans.
Exactly.
So what do you think is more persuasive, fear or hope, simple or complicated?
I don't think. I'm not sure if I agree with you that the Democrats' platform is one of hope.
No, you said it was.
It's more positive. That was their rhetoric.
You're right. Obama was more hope.
Obama's main he wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope.
Right.
Certainly, the Democratic platform was more positive. But from a takeaway, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you feel? I don't know if people left the Democratic convention feeling this overwhelming sense of optimism. I think Democrats believe there are all these problems with the country too. But it's much more of a let's roll up our sleeves and let's
No, I think having watched all of it, I would say it's definitely more hopeful. The Democrats are, like you say, are saying, they're basically saying America's great. We have issues, of course, to keep working on. They do have this slow, ponderous message, but basically, it's like it's the opposite of fear. Things are not all falling apart. We're not all going to die. And so I guess I'm just using the word hope, fear versus hope. But we could just say positive versus negative. So what do you think is more persuasive, the negative simple or the positive complicated?
I think it's definitely negative if people feel negative.
Yeah, because if people actually are afraid, we know
nothing's more powerful than fear.
Nothing's more powerful than fear. We know from the research that the old brain, the part of the brain that is the part of your brain that is always looking out for your survival, it's called the reptilian brain. That's, you know what I almost said?
What?
It trumps everything else.
It's funny.
Terrible pun. But it does, right? I mean, it's instinctual. And so messages of fear are very, very powerful. And in fact, the phrase I like to use is the idea of losing something, right? Which is what fear is all about. I'm going to lose my livelihood. I'm going to lose my life. Is more powerful than the anticipation of gain, right? Things will get better, and so on. And that's true, and it really is true. Now, the other thing, there are other motivations besides fear that can be very powerful. Essentially, but they are more nuanced and they are more complicated, and so things like the desire for mastery, the desire to grow, the need to belong to a group.
So in Trump's case, right? Because the Trump platform is a very exclusive platform. It's basically we don't like brown people and they shouldn't be allowed in the country. That is not exactly inclusive. So if you want to feel part of a group, and that group is, liberty, inclusiveness, then so you have you're scared because you don't want to be blown up by an ISIS cell in your city,
right?
But you also you're internally conflicted because your self story is not one of someone who thinks that Muslims shouldn't be allowed in the country. So if you have those inner conflicts, then I think that subdues the fear.
Right. So it is interesting. So you have the fear, and then I think the point you're bringing up is there are any of these other motivations like the need to belong, the desire for mastery, the self-story you have about yourself, are any of those strong enough to overcome that initial fear? Because the fear will easily take over, and this is, and so that's the question, and we don't know the answer because we don't know what's going to happen. But in order for people to not succumb to the fear, then one of these other motivators that hey, I can do a little plug for my book, How to Get People to Do Stuff. One of the other motivators, like self-stories, need to belong, desire for mastery, and so on, will need to be constantly reinforced. Otherwise, the fear will just trump.
You can just say it's a word. You can just say the word. It's too strange that it's the word and the candidate at the same time. So I mean, and I don't know the answer of what's going to happen, but I'm just constantly fascinated. I mean, we know, for instance, that negative campaigns work, negative ads work, and that's because of the of the fear and the simplicity of the message.
Now, I thought we could also. Oh,
Well, wait, if we're talking about fear,
yeah.
do you know the Edward R. Murrow quote?
No, what?
Uh, uh, it's really good. I
What
always
is it?
think about it when we're talking about fear in this
Yeah.
context. So it goes, we will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason. If we dig deep in our history and our doctrine and remember that we are not descended from fearful men. That's what I said. But yeah, remember that we are not descended from fearful men. Not from men who fear to write, to speak, to associate, and to defend causes that were, for the moment, unpopular. So, I love that Edward R. Murrow quote.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before that I didn't know whether either candidate campaign has hired persuasion experts, but in the past that has happened. So, for instance, the Obama campaign, and I don't know if this was in 2008 and 2012, one or the other or both, had actually hired Robert Cialdini, who wrote The Psychology of Influence, and a team. They had a team of persuasion psychology.
I'm still waiting to get a call.
I'm waiting to get a call.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
No, we are.
Me on behalf of yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I'm surprised we haven't gotten a call, but we haven't. But anyway, this has happened in the past.
Yo, Hillary, call us.
So, well, now I have. I mean, I actually did work on a.
You've been interviewed about various things on the
No,
Hillary
I
campaign.
worked. I was hired as a consultant for a brief amount of time for a congressional race. But then they didn't continue the race, so I wasn't very long. So we know that that's happened. Now, I also wanted to talk about technology and how technology and persuasion work together and have historically. So this whole idea of...
It was Obama, right?
Well, Obama was I'll talk about the technology that Obama used that was new and different. But actually, the first time technology became really important...
Ah, yes. Good point. Yes.
...was many years ago. And I don't know the year of this. Do you know the year?
I want to say 62. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been the 62 race.
62 because
Was
then
that?
it was no
Wait a
because
minute.
no, it must 60 maybe. Do continue your thought. I'll look it up.
Look it up. It was Nixon versus Kennedy. So Richard Nixon was running against John Kennedy, and it was the first time the debates were televised. Before then, there had been live debates. There had been debates on the radio.
It was 60, which makes a lot of sense because it was then, because 64, 68, 72, 78, that was
So in 1960, Nixon versus Kennedy, the debates were on TV.
It was, and I don't know if you've seen this. You should definitely go watch it. The camera angle is just amazing. It's basically like a 4-inch square of each candidate's face. Like their hair is not even entirely in frame. It's like it's a very, very close up.
Well, TV was new.
I know. It's a very tight.
All right, and then what
angle.
do you see? What happened during the televised debates?
Nixon sweat.
Yeah.
He was sweating. He looked clammy and nervous, and Kennedy was beautiful.
Kennedy was, he just looked calm and he was handsome, and Nixon looked like a sweaty mess. And it made people think that, well, first of all, they just, he looked bad. But then he also seemed not trustworthy, right? Because he looked nervous.
There's, and also, I mean, good looking and politics go hand in hand, like bread and butter.
Well, they do. And there was a research study done that showed, actually looked at candidates running, I believe, maybe either more or exclusively in Canada. I don't know that it was the U.S. And they compared the attractiveness of the candidate to the chances that they were going to win. Now, this was not just at the national level, but even at the local level. And candidates who were deemed attractive were much more likely to win.
Well, I don't think that's surprising. They're much more likely to be successful in all walks of life.
That's right. That's right.
But what's interesting is also height.
Yes.
If you want to be, there's a significant correlation between height and being a politician.
Yeah.
So let's look at our last couple of presidents, all right? Obama, he is really tall.
He's really tall.
He's really tall. Bush isn't super tall, but he's definitely not short. Clinton is very tall.
You mean Bill Clinton?
Bill Clinton, yes. Yeah, so there's just a long history of
tallness.
Very tall people winning elections.
So
the only good news for Hillary is Trump is not that tall.
Yeah, but he's taller than Hillary.
Yes, but I have it. But see, this is my sneaky suspicion because we haven't. First of all, men seem to win a lot more elections than women, so maybe this is completely true and with the trend. But I actually think that it's not so much tallness, but tallness relative to gender. So relative tallness.
Are you a tall man?
Yes, or are you a tall woman?
Tall woman.
Yes, exactly.
How tall is Hillary Clinton?
I don't know. I will look it up. You continue to muse.
I'll continue. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is, what you mentioned, the technology that Obama used during his...
Can I just quickly jump in?
Please.
So for those of you who don't know, in 2008, Obama was an outsider candidate. Clinton was the insider. And for reasons that apparently now make a lot of sense, he decided not to use the DNC's system, both in either the primary nor the general election.
By system, you mean?
So the Democratic National Committee has... They have a whole infrastructure that's dedicated to getting their candidates elected. They have databases on... back then, it wasn't much, but... compared to what it is today, but right, they have databases,
registered Democrats, people who vote
addresses, and various stuff. And the Obama campaign said, "Screw that, we're not gonna touch them with a 10-foot pole." And they made their own independent system using very fancy technology. And you got to remember, this was 2007, so this was pre-Twitter. Google was kind of a thing. I mean, it was like it's very early, still pretty early in the technology age. I think had the iPhone just come out?
Yep.
So about then, and so they made a very what today would just be considered your normal corporate contacts system registry, right? You got all the database of users and people who have interacted with your campaign and likely people and all kinds of data that you can glean and then go back to the well for, right? They had a huge database of email addresses to get donations and organize rallies, and it was
not only that,
but now that's like the extent of my knowledge of it.
Okay,
and go ahead.
I can tell you a little bit more about it, which is that they used the system in a very specific way during the campaign. So if you were a volunteer for their campaign and you were going door to door, you would talk to people and get the vote out and so on, like between the convention and the actual election. So during the time when, not during the primaries, but during the general election. When you would go to your local office, they would hand you a computer printout of who you were supposed to go, which doors you were supposed to knock on. You were not just supposed to go knock on doors. You're supposed to go knock on these particular doors and so you'd get a little neighborhood, right? That was where you get maybe 5 blocks or whatever that you were supposed to work, but only going to talk to certain people on that block, the people whose name and address you were given. And then you had to mark on there when you went to talk to them whether they said they were going to vote for Obama, whether they said they were not going to vote for Obama, or whether they were unsure. Okay? And then you brought that piece of paper back to the office, and they had then people at the office who would enter that into their software. And so what they had very particular strategies, probably changed depending on neighborhoods. But basically, if you had talked to someone who said they were going to vote for Obama, they would not appear anymore on the next day's sheet. Okay?
Yeah.
And the no votes would not appear on the next day's sheets.
Right.
Because the only people they wanted people to talk to were the people that weren't sure. And so over time, it just, the list got smaller and smaller, but it meant that they were targeting, particular people for the door-to-door. Now, then the phone calls, as you got closer to the election, and the phone calls and the leaflets where they would leave leaflets that would just say "Go vote," and the phone calls that would remind people to vote would only go to the people who had said they were going to vote for Obama. So it was this very extremely coordinated and computerized system that had never, as you said, that had never happened before.
Yeah.
That was the first.
And it worked. Got elected twice.
Apparently, something worked. Now, I don't know this time round what's going on with the campaigns. What Hillary is doing versus what Donald Trump is doing. But I do know if you go to the websites of the candidates, for the if you go to Hillary's website, there is a huge section. You have to get through the pages where they just want money, and that takes a while to get around that. But if you can get around that, you will get to a page where they have job openings, and there are just this huge number of job openings for tech.
Yeah.
At their Brooklyn, New York office. There's just, they have, just lots of, programming analyst, digital this, digital that. It's quite amazing. And so far, and I'm sure Trump must have that somewhere, but I haven't found it at the Trump website.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether, the Trump website is hiring computer people or not. Maybe they've just...
The Trump, just in general, the Trump campaign is much smaller. They have a much smaller staff, so...
Yeah. So anyway, that's just... so I'm sure that, technology is going to be used. Now, we also know, in terms of technology, that the Twitter campaigns have been very active this go-round.
By the way,
right?
Trump is taller than Hillary. Trump is 6'3".
I would think. Well,
Hillary,
that's tall.
Yes. Trump is in the...
very tall.
Especially for his age. He's in about the 95th percentile.
Wow.
Hillary's tall as well.
What
according
is she?
to this, she is 5'6".
That's not short for
a
a woman.
Well, especially for her age, she's probably in the 85th percentile. So again, quite tall.
Tall people.
And if she wears some platform shoes, maybe she'll be in the 90th percentile. I mean, you laugh, but...
Oh my gosh! So we're gonna see her on 8 inch.
Trump is in the. I mean, I don't know if that counts if that includes his hair though. So.
Oh no, Trump hair jokes.
And you laugh, but it's 2 inches tall. So if you discount the hair, then he's 6'1", and then he's maybe in the 75th percentile. It's a big difference.
Yeah, that's funny.
Hillary's hair is large as well. So I don't know.
Yes, they both have large hair.
I cannot tell exactly how tall it is. But maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe, of course, politicians generally have big hair, and I think that, again, that's to make them appear taller.
Now, do you think that
it's like some sort of lizard that flails its little gill things to make itself look larger?
All right, enough on the hair. Talk to me about the use of other technology in the campaigns. For instance, we know that the Donald is very active on Twitter. I know that the Hillary campaign is active on Twitter. I don't know that it's billed as being Hillary. I think it's her campaign. What about, and we know that, the millennials, of which you are in that group, you guys are not that. You're not as big on Twitter as, for instance, the Gen Xers are.
Yeah, Twitter's not a big
So,
deal compared to other social media.
yeah. So,
Instagram or Snapchat.
Yeah. So, Instagram and Snapchat, are either of the candidates on that? Because I don't know. I haven't been paying attention.
I'm sure both. They all have their little Snapchat.
But you haven't been paying attention to that.
No, I don't. I don't. For Snapchat and Instagram as well, I don't really follow famous people. I really only follow my friends.
Your own little group.
From personal level. But Snapchat is fun. 2 days ago,
Yeah.
Draymond Green, who is maybe the 12th best basketball player in the NBA,
Yeah.
he meant to snap a private chat and send it out.
Uh-oh.
But he accidentally hit the public button and
what
totally snapped, like, I don't know, like 14 million people his penis.
Oh, my God. Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a dick pic. He went up to his public feed. I don't know what to tell you. And then if he's like, oh, it's hacked, and then later he's like, no, I hit the wrong button.
Maybe it's a good thing that if Hillary and Donald don't use Snapchat.
That's so funny. Yeah, so that's the age we live in. So yeah, you're one wrong click away.
You're one movement of your finger away from
accidentally sending 14 million people a picture of your penis.
Yeah.
Directly to their phone. It's not like they had to like go look for it. It's like they get a notification.
Yeah, that's not good.
That it's
all right, we're going to hope that does not happen with either political candidate in this campaign season.
What a story.
I mean, hacking is definitely an issue in this campaign season.
Yes.
So talking about technology and campaigns, and that's likely to consider now to continue. The other thing that's an issue with technology in this campaign season is that many of the states have been served notices by like the FBI that their voting registration databases are either have been hacked or are in danger of being hacked.
Yeah, it's all just a giant disaster. So this is exciting. I will say I don't want to get too deep into that because the United States government and its use of technology is abysmal. They're always behind. It's just a giant, impossible labyrinth of depressingness. I think it was last month, finally, for the first time ever, people in Congress could now no longer can use another phone that's not a BlackBerry.
That's pretty bad.
iPhones and Android phones were not approved for security clearance until like last month.
All right. Well,
so like it's just a disaster,
right.
and I'm sure and the states are worse, and I'm sure everyone got hacked and all the data's gone.
Right,
and it's really easy to hack into the voter registration.
Let's not even go there then.
Or the voting machines themselves, and there's no.
All right. We'll
also
be done with that.
we live in an age in which one presidential candidate told the historic archenemy of the country that they should commit espionage on another presidential candidate.
Apparently, he was just being sarcastic.
So this is Oh, and we also live in an age in which another country, Russia, hacked into one of our political parties in an attempt to influence the United States election. If this happens during the Cold War, it's a nuclear winter. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's like espionage of the highest level, but no one seems to care. So.
All right. Well, on this
very weird.
This hopeful, positive note. It's a fearful note.
This election is so bizarre. Everything is just bizarre. Yeah. So, but besides the technology, but that's just the technology in a governmental structure.
Yes.
The campaigns are probably they hire smart people.
Yes, so they probably have.
The whole get out the vote thing, or get out your party's vote.
Yep.
Very, very important.
Yep.
I don't feel like we got to it enough real research and insight.
Well, we're at it's time to end the episode.
I'm not really too surprised. I mean, it's a tough topic. Very broad.
Well, I guess we're going to see whether whether fear and simple can be trumped by nuanced and other motivations.
I actually, I don't know if you've seen. It's so funny. Everyone's trying to make a political slogan.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of them are really good, and some of them just are kind of grimacy.
Yeah.
Both sides do both ways. I really liked the love trumps hate.
Yes, that's very interesting.
I thought that was a very clever play on words.
Yeah.
Well, apparently in the there were people walking around in the Republican convention with lapels that said I'd rather be a bitch than vote for one. So
okay, that we've definitely reached the end of our podcast episode.
So that happened. Anyways, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and we're sorry if we've depressed everybody. We'll try and do a more upbeat one next time. How's that?
Hey, I just want to just so everyone knows.
What?
Everything's fine. The sun is still shining. Cthulhu has not risen, and is. Do you know Cthulhu?
No.
Do you ever read? Do you know Lovecraft?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you ever read any Lovecraft?
I did a very long time ago.
Yeah, that's his whole kind of portals to other dimensions and like the old gods like rising up and very interesting stuff. But
the world is not ending and we're okay. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, guys. And it's like, look, it's just politics.
It's just politics.
It's just politics, you know. So people are very worried, and there's grinding of teeth on all sides, and the flailing of limbs, and the gnashing of bodies. But it'll be okay.
Thanks, Guthrie. I'm glad to hear that.
I mean, like I said, I always take pleasure in the fact that the United States has been around for 250 years, and there's been way more turbulent times. Again, senators getting beaten and people getting assassinated and bombs blowing up and anarchists and communists and race riots. I mean, we've dealt with a lot worse than.
So we'll keep going.
So, see, now on that positive
note, we can say
enjoy
goodbye.
your weekend. Again, who knows when this will air, but hopefully by the time it does, like, everything we've said is not completely irrelevant.
And we'll be interested to see whether we hear back from anyone, since we're talking about politics.
People tend to
get excited about politics.
Yeah, they tend to be.
So if you want to get
with
excited
us
and talk to us, you can email us at info@theteamw.com. Send us your ideas for future podcast episodes.
I knew we were getting in trouble when we did a politics episode.
And I won't give out my Twitter handle then.
Yeah.
Don't email us.
Just tweet the Donald at Donald Trump or at the Hillary campaign directly, and you can just leave us out of it. How's that?
All right.
Don't blame me, Messenger. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.